This is 8,2,128. What we have is we have x plus 4 over x squared minus x minus 42. Then we have a plus plus 3 over 7 minus x. Now the best way to work these problems is you make sure that your denominator is prime factored and every term in your denominator is written in descending order, leading term positive. So look at the first denominator, x squared minus x minus 42. Is that prime factored? Okay, it isn't. You should be real suspicious of it if it has squared term in it, leading term. Now that's written in descending order, leading term positive, and there's no common factors. What we're going to do is we're going to try to factor that thing. We're going to factor that into what? How are we going to factor it, Ray? Ray, how are we going to factor that first
I'll pass.
denominator? So how are you going to go about figuring it out? Okay, trial and error over the integers is what you end up, because it's a trinomial, not a special case, and so the only thing you have left to try. So when we do this, what's our first term's going to be?
X.
X.
Signs are different, positive and negative.
Okay, so plus and minus sign because that's negative. Now, what are going to be the numbers that we use?
6 and 7.
Okay, 6 and 7. A pair of numbers that multiply together give you 42, whose difference is 1. Now,
7 is negative.
and the 7 is negative, right? Because the larger number has got to be negative to get you that minus sign. So now, that denominator is prime factor, right? What about this denominator? Okay, so make it so that it's in descending order. So the x in front would be minus x plus 7. Now, is that good enough?
Well, you have to put it out front so that the x isn't negative.
Okay, so what you have to do is you have to have the leading term positive. So that means you've got a factor of minus 1 out of there. And then this minus 1, rather than leaving it in the denominator, remember that, I'm just going to go back, remember that when you do a minus 1 over 2, when you're dealing with rational numbers, is equivalent to 1 over minus 2, is equivalent to a negative 1/2. So we want to write this thing so that it's this way rather than this way, right? So we're going to take this minus sign right here and change that sign out in front, right? And we can do that because if it's negative in numerator or denominator or out in front, it's all the same. So now we have this denominator and this denominator. Now, what is our least common denominator? We could go through the process of building it, but does it appear there? the first denominator is the least common denominator, isn't it? The x plus 6, x minus 7 is the least common denominator. Because if you were to go build it, that's what you'd end up with, is that right? Now then, this whole rational term that's right here does not have to be built into the least common denominator because it contains it. But this rational term right here has to be built. Built with what? To get the least common denominator. What does the denominator lack to be a least common denominator? What is the least common denominator? Okay, x plus 6, x minus 7. So, what do we have to do to this one so that the denominator is x plus 6 x times x minus 7? Okay, multiply this by x plus 6, right? That means the numerator has to be multiplied by x plus 6, right? Now, both denominators are the same in that they're the least common. X plus 6 times x minus 7. So we can just write it down as a single denominator. Now what we want to do is we want to deal with the numerators and combine them. So what do we do with this x plus 4 in that numerator?
Just bring it down, right?
Okay, that's right, Caleb. Just bring it down, x plus 4. Now then, that next one, what do we got to do with that minus sign right there? Okay, bring it down, Nick. All right. Now, how about this thing right here?
And multiply by x plus 6.
Okay, so you're going to distribute that 3 across the x plus 6, right? And then you're going to change the signs as you do it. Isn't that what it's telling you? So my numerator is going to be x plus 4 minus 3x minus 18. And my denominator is x plus 6 times x minus 7. Now what? What? Okay, combine like terms in the numerator. So we have an x and a minus 3x, so that's a minus 2x in the numerator. We have a plus 4 and a minus 18, and that combines to a minus 14. Is that right? And my denominator is x plus 6 times x minus 7. Is there anything else we can do with that? Okay. I mean, you might think that numerator could be, if I took a minus 2 out, I could have a minus 2 times x plus 7, but that wouldn't do me any good, would it? Because it's x plus 7 in the numerator, x minus 7 in the denominator. But you have to check that out. So essentially, this is it. I'm going to look at 130. It says 1 over x plus 1. Then a plus x over x plus 6 minus 6. and then I get a minus 5x minus 2 over x squared minus 5x minus 6. Okay. So what is the plan of attack?
Use from the last one.
Okay, each one of those denominators are prime factored, except the last one is not, right, Whitney? So how are you going to prime factor the last one? Trial and error. And so you're going to put, what, x here and x here. The signs are going to be plus and minus. So what are my numbers going to be?
32.
It's got to be two numbers times itself is 6, whose difference is 5. The 1 and 6, right? So what has to be negative?
The 6.
The 6 has got to be, right? Correct? Okay. Now, everything is prime factored. I want to know what is my least common denominator.
X plus 1 and X minus
Okay,
6.
x plus 1 and x minus 6. It is the denominator in this term we just factored, right? That's the least common. Now that means that these other two rational terms have got to have that denominator. So this first rational term, what do I have to do to it so that it has the least common denominator?
Multiply by X minus 6.
Okay, x minus 6, and it has to be x minus 6 in the numerator. What about this second one?
Multiply by X plus 1.
Okay, x plus 1, is that what someone said?
Yeah.
And x plus 1. Now, every denominator has the factors of the least common denominator, correct? So then we can write, just draw a line. Numerators are going to be above, but the denominator, being they're all the same, we can just write it down once. Now then, this numerator, what do we do with it?
You distribute the 1.
Okay, distribute the 1, but that
Yeah, so it's X
doesn't do
minus
anything,
6.
right?
Yeah.
So we just bring down the x minus 6. What about this one?
Distribute the X.
Okay, we distribute the x, don't we? So, and being this is a plus sign, we don't have to worry about bracketing things, right? So when we distribute the x, it's going to be a plus x squared plus x, isn't that right? Now this last term, we have a negative sign, right? And this straight line acts as a bracket. It actually brackets this. So now what do we do?
Change the negative to 5, so it's 5X plus 2.
Okay, so it's a minus 5x plus 2, right? Because this sign opposites the signs on everything inside there. Now we're going to do what?
Combine with yours.
Okay, and then in the numerator, we're going to write it in descending order. So our numerator is going to be x squared, and then we have x, 2x, minus 5x. What do we got? Minus 3x. And we got a 6, minus 6, and a plus 2, minus 4. And our denominator is x plus 1, x minus 6. Now, have we got it done? Does that numerator factor? Factors into a pair of binomials, don't it? With an x and an x. And the signs are what? Plus and minus. Now, two numbers whose times itself is 4, whose difference is 3. What is it? 4 and 1. So which is negative, the 4 or the 1? The 4 is negative and the 1 is positive. So now that's prime factor. Now what?
You can take out the x plus 1.
That x plus 1 in the numerator, when we put it over this x plus 1, becomes 1. They're multiplicative inverses. So now my end result is the numerator is x minus 4 over x minus 6. And that's my answer. Right? Let's look at 134. It says 2x plus 9 over 3 minus x plus x plus 5 over x plus 7. And it's a minus 2x squared plus 3x minus 3 over x squared plus 4x minus 21. Now what's the plan of attack on this one?
Factor that last one.
Okay, we can factor the last one. So it's going to factor what? Pair binomials, right? Trial and error with the integers. An x and an x. What are the signs? Opposite, plus, minus. Now, two numbers times itself is 21, whose difference is 4. What is that?
3.
Okay, 7 and 3. So which one's negative?
7
3 is negative, isn't it? And the 7's positive, that would give you 4 positive. Right? So that's prime factor. Anything else we have to do? What about the denominator of the leading term? Is that descending order leading term positive?
No. We have to make it so that the x is in front.
So it's x minus 3, we take, it's actually a minus x plus 3, but then we have to take a minus sign out, right? And where do we put that minus sign? Out here in front here. See, the intermediate step to this is it's a minus x plus 3. Then we take the minus sign out, and it's x minus 3. You want to always have it in every prime factor in descending order with the leading term positive. Otherwise you'll get too many prime factors. Okay, are we done factoring denominators into primes? Now, what is our least common denominator?
X minus 3, x plus 7.
Okay, it's actually, this denominator is the least common, right? Now, we look at the first rational term. What do we have to do to it?
Multiply by x plus 7.
Okay, x plus 7 over x plus 7. What do we have to do to this rational term?
X minus 2.
Okay, x minus 3, x minus 3. Now, every denominator has the least common denominator, right? So you write the least common denominator underneath your line, x minus 3 and x minus 7. What about this numerator right here? What does it come down as? You got to take into account this, don't you? And so that's going to what? Change the signs of this. Because this straight line brackets this thing, don't it? So what is it going to be? Minus 2x, minus 9. Well, let's see. I kind of got ahead of myself here. That numerator is actually this whole thing right here, isn't it? So I better deal with it a little bit differently. I could deal with it that way, but put a minus in front of 2x plus 9 times x plus 7. Foil it and then change the signs, right? So if I foil it, if I leave that minus sign out in front, bracket this and foil that, that's going to be 2x squared, right? Plus 14x plus 9x plus 63. Now, I'm going to see what I can combine like terms and change signs. This one's going to be a minus 2x squared. I'm changing the sign. Inside the bracket is a plus 23, and I change the sign, right, to minus 23x. Inside it's 63, so it's a minus 63. So I've taken care of this minus sign and this whole thing here, right? Now, I have to bring the next pair of terms down, and that is an x plus 5 times an x minus 3, and it's a plus sign in front of it, right? Plus. So I have to FOIL that. So that's going to be an x, that's an x squared minus 3x plus 5x minus 15. And that's a plus sign, so those won't change. So this becomes a plus x squared, and the minus 3x plus 5x is a plus 2x, right? And then it's minus 15. Now, if you recall, this line brackets this, don't it? And that minus sign says change the signs inside the bracket. Correct?
Yeah.
So I'm going to change, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to write it, right up here. I'm going to go minus 2x squared minus 3x plus 3. So this is my numerator that I'm dealing with. So now my denominator is still x minus 3 times x minus 7. And my numerator, notice I have a minus 2x squared, a minus 2x squared, that's 4x squared, and I got a plus x squared.
That's actually supposed to be x plus 7.
Where's it at?
On the denominator. Should be x
Oh.
plus
X plus 7? So I missed it here, right? Okay, thanks. So anyway, it's a minus 2x squared minus 2x squared plus x squared.
So it's a negative 3.
That's a minus 3x squared, right?
Mhm.
And I got minus 23x plus 2x is a minus 21x. Minus 3x is a minus 24x. Negative 63. I'm going to put this plus 3 so that I got a negative 60 and then go negative 5. Negative 65. Now what you can do is you can try to factor that numerator, but you're going to find out that it doesn't have any common factors. So this is going to be the answer. If it had common factors, you better have factored it. I want to look at 136A. And it's saying simplify this. B over 6 minus 6 over B divided by 6 over B minus 4 plus B over 2. How are you going to deal with that one? To combine these terms, what do you have to have?
A common
Common denominator, isn't it? What's the common denominator of 6 and B? 6B? So that means that this term has got to be multiplied by B over B, and this term's got to be multiplied by what? 6 over 6. Now you're going to have to get common denominator here in this group. Now you notice you got a B, you got a 1, and you got a 2. So the common denominator is what? 2B. So you're going to multiply this by 2 over 2. And then this one's going to have to be 2B over 2B. And this one's going to have to be B over B, right? I'm going to deal with this one right here. The denominator, the common denominator is 6B. The numerator is B squared minus 36, right? And it says divided by. The common denominator is what? 2B. And the numerator, the first term is 2 times 6, 12, right? The second term is a negative 8B. And the third term is plus B squared. What are we going to do with that thing?
You're going to cross
Invert it. We're going to have to invert and multiply, right? When you divide, you invert your divisors and multiply. So this is B squared minus 36 over 6B times 2B, we invert, right? And I'm going to write that in descending order. B squared minus 8B plus 12. We're like, I can do something with this one and this one, can't I? I can take the 2 with the 6 and make it 3, and the B cancels, right? But now what about this term right here and this term? What do I have to do? Prime factor them? What is this term right up here? A difference of what? Squares? B squared minus 6 squared? So how does that factor into what?
B plus 6 and B minus 6.
B plus 6, B minus 6. This one down here. It's descending order, leading term positive, no common factor. It's not a special case, so it's going to be trial and error, right? Pair of binomials. It's got to be a what? A B and a B. What are the signs?
Both negative.
Both negative signs, right? Now, what two numbers times itself is 12? When you add them together, you get 8.
6 and 2.
6 and 2, right? So you go 6 and 2. Now, look at this one and look at this one. What do we got?
Can you take it out to B minus 6?
D minus 6 goes out, right? So now in the numerator, we have what left?
Plus 6.
B plus 6. And in the denominator, we have 3 times B minus 2. And as far as I'm concerned, that's good enough. Okay, any questions on that? Before you do the quiz, I want to ask you something. If you have x squared plus 2x plus 6 over x squared minus 4x minus 8, can you do this? No. Only if it's a product. If this were x squared times 2x times 6, x squared times minus 4x times a minus 8, then that'll cancel. It's got to be times, it can't be plus. And this is what, I just graded some papers, and people were doing this. They were canceling that. They were canceling this with this, getting 2. They were canceling this and doing 2, or 3, and doing 4. I shuddered. And if you don't understand